Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'd like to call this October 7th, 2022 meeting of the Central Florida MPO Alliance to order. And I'm Orange County Commissioner Christine Moore, freshly reelected with no November elections. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'd like to call this October 7th, 2022 meeting of the Central Florida MPO Alliance.
That's pretty good. Okay, she's got it.
I guess I did okay. You wanted to hear it again. And I'm currently serving as Vice Chair. Commissioner Michelle Stone couldn't be with us today, so I'll be chairing today's meeting, and maybe afterwards, if we all want to chat about hurricane issues, that'll be fine, but we're going to try to continue through our agenda. I'd like to begin by asking Commissioner Jeremy Clark from the Polk TPO to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, next up is the roll call confirmation that we have a quorum. Ms. Smith, could you please call the roll, make sure that we have a quorum today?
Yes.
And as a reminder, please, members, activate your microphone before you speak and then turn it off afterwards. And Ms. Smith, you can go ahead.
The microphone isn't, but there we go. Bethea.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Daly.
Here.
Delari. Estep.
Here.
Gertman.
Here.
Grebe.
Here.
Minus.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Power.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Tyler.
Here.
Young. She's here. Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum present.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And before we entertain the public comments, I'd like to first recognize Ms. Jean Harlow, who is joining us virtually today. Jean is the FHWA Florida Division Community Planner. No, Jean from her days with the River to Sea TPO, and we wanted to take a moment to welcome her and introduce her in her new role. Welcome, Ms. Parlow. We're glad to have you with us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes, we
okay?
can. Mhm.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Then we'd like to note for the record that we're also joined by Mr. Ryan Kordak, filling in for Mr. Para Agrawal and the Polk TPO Director. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Whittington because she has some announcements and updates to our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome to Metro Plan Orlando and the Central Florida MPO Alliance meeting. I want to share with those of you who are around the table, maybe for the first time, who are like, how in the world do I use this thing? In the middle of your screen there on the bottom, there's a little ribbon there. The middle button activates your microphone. So if it's blue, it's off. If it's red, it's on. Only 4 of them can be used at once. So you only activate it prior to you speaking, and then you deactivate it when you are finished speaking. If you want to review the agenda on your screens, there is a button that says remote documents. You see that? The one that says remote, you'll click the remote and then you'll go to agendas, the delegation. So that's how you do that, okay? If you get lost in there any place, over to the right side of your screen is a gray box that's highlighted there. It's gray. You just tap that and that takes you back to your home screen. If your red light is indicated, that means your mics are on. If it's off. Please mind your water bottles. The cameras are positioned in an awkward place. So if your water bottles are in front of it, the public is going to get a nice view of your Zephyr Hills. Okay. And if you need help, you can always turn your, take your nameplate, turn it on its side. That's another way we'll know that you need some help. All right.
Paperless and remote.
Paperless and then remote. Thank you. Paperless and then remote. That's how you get to the agenda. And there are two versions there. One has the backup and one is just the 3-page agenda. Okay, so again, welcome. And on behalf of Gary Hutman, our executive director, who is actually traveling today, ordinarily he would be here, but he is attending the Emerald Coast Symposium up in the Panhandle, and he sends his regrets. Madam Chair, a change to the agenda, item 7C. The presenter was invited prior to the agenda being published. She evacuated during the hurricane to South Carolina to be with her family, and so she's not able to be here today. But she did send some remarks, and so what she would have said had she been able to be here today is that FDOT is soliciting requests for funding regional and individual trail projects through the shared use and non-motorized trail program. Programming is for fiscal year 28-29. And to be eligible for consideration, applicants must submit a separate complete request for funding with all applicable project information, including required signatures for each eligible unfunded regional or individual trail project through the grant application process online system. The solicitation period opens September 29th, and it will close at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on December 15th, 2022. And I want to thank Rakenya Henson for forwarding that information to us and just letting us know that the presenter was not going to be able to be here. We would not have had that without Rakenya. So thank you, Rakenya. As a reminder today, members, the Central Florida MPO Alliance bylaws permits the directors to vote in the absence of their respective organizations' members. And so today that is the case with Lake Sumter. So Mike Woods will be voting in, I'm sorry, we do have one of his members here. Scratch that. Commissioner Estep is here. Lastly, you do have supplemental items at your places. Delegation reports were received from Lake Sumter and the Pope TPO. Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks. And with the removal of item 7C, we are ready to move forward with the agenda.
All right, thank you, Ms. Whittington. And at this time, it is open to public comment. The first two of our opportunities to do so today. Public comments on action items are heard before the action is taken at the beginning of this meeting, and comments that are more general can be heard near the end of this meeting. Comments can be made in person or online by those joining us via Zoom. Members of the public joining us virtually who wish to speak will use the raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. And if you're attending by phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When your name is called, staff will unmute your microphone and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. Ms. Kathy, are there any citizens who would like to comment on any action items today?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. And Virginia, is there anyone that you have signed up from the public to wish to speak to us today in person?
We have not received any comment cards, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, thank you. And again, public comments can be submitted by email, phone, message before the meeting. Do we have any comments submitted by mail or email by phone, Virginia?
We did not, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you so much for that. All right, now delegation reports, and Ms. Whittington mentioned it earlier, but are provided for information only unless someone has a question for one of the directors. Are there any questions on the delegation reports today? All right, seeing that there are none, we'll continue. Next, we will get to hear our FDO district reports. And, oh, I have a substitute, don't I? All right, Secretary Tyler, are you going to be providing the report for Mr. Gaither from FDOT?
He and Rakenya are going to be tag teaming for District 5, and we have not heard from Mr. Gaither yet.
Okay, so Virginia and Mr. Tyler are going to tag team for the report from FDOT, and welcome and thank you for being with us.
All right, good morning. Good morning. It's great to be here. And yes, Mr. Gaither is he's indisposed this morning. So he's got his hands full along with our folks down in District 1 dealing with the hurricane. So he has been heavily involved in the department's response. So I don't have much, of a report for District 1. I can certainly cover District 5 and I appreciate the folks from Polk County coming up this morning. But I will be starting off the FDOT report, and Virginia is going to help clean up. I told her to bring a mop and a bucket because she's going to have to, clean up a lot after me. I've had a lot on my mind this past week, but I did want to be here today, trying to get back out, resuming normal business functions because, the storm has passed. We're recovering from the storm, but we still have a lot of work that needs to be done in Central Florida with transportation, and we are getting back into gear. But I do want to talk a little bit about the hurricane response. I figure that I tried doing that in my first official function, not talking about it, and then that was the first question I got was, what's going on with the hurricane? So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the department's response to the hurricane. It what happened down in South Florida is just tremendously impactful and tragic. It's unprecedented, the damage that they're dealing with. And the state's response has been overwhelming, with all of the state agencies and all of our local partners all working together. And I'm just proud that DOT's been a part of that. And my focus has been very narrow. So if you ask me some questions, it's gonna be primarily DOT related. It feels like I was in a box for a little while, especially when we lost cable in our EOC. All I knew was happening in the outside world is what I saw in the ITS cameras. So I'm kind of laser focused on what's happening right here in Central Florida. But I will say that, down in District 1 in the Fort Myers area, the Department of Transportation, with the invitation of the local community and at the direction of the governor, we are trying to rapidly restore connectivity by vehicles other than boats and air, and aircraft to Pine Island and Sanibel Island. Pine Island was restored earlier this week, and work is going like gangbusters to restore connectivity to Sanibel. There's thousands of people on those islands, and they need services, they need help, and I'm just proud the DOT's a part of getting that help delivered. So it's almost like I'm going to call it a public-private, or 3P. There's three partners there. It's the local community, it's FDOT, and private contractors all working together. If you see the earth moving operation, there's DOT trucks mixed in with private contractor vehicles, and it doesn't matter who's who. We all know what we're doing, and we're all working towards the same goal. So it's excellent to see that taking place. There's also damage further inland, and we have similar damage in Central Florida, and so kind of it falls into the three categories that I've been dealing with. Water over the road, dealing with road closures, signals being out. When those signals go down and people start going back to normal business, it's extremely unsafe. Because not everybody treats a dark signal as a four-way stop, and crashes occur. So it's a priority to get those signals restored as quickly as we can. And then debris removal, because there's debris everywhere, and that all needs to take place. Here in Central Florida, District 5, the primary damage that we are still dealing with today, or impacts rather, I'll say, our Sunrail line has sustained some damage down in Osceola County. So right now we cannot reach our final three stations on the line. But we are working day and night, 24/7. Our contractor on the corridor is working 24/7 to restore that damage and get service resumed to the three southernmost stations. And then we also have State Road 46 between Sanford and Titusville is closed, and it's likely to be closed for at least another week, based on the projections that I'm getting from my hydrologists and hydraulic engineers. The river is starting to come down in that area, but it was as high as 21 inches over the roadway. It's down to, I think, 14.5 this morning. So that's not elevations, and it's a highly scientific process of go out there and measure the deepest point to the pavement. That's what I'm focused on. And so we're down to 14. We got to get down to less than 0. And then we got to see what our road is like, because it's going to have been inundated for almost 2 weeks. Is it going to be able to take the traffic, the trucks? So not sure exactly how quickly we're going to be able to open that facility, because we might have to do some emergency repairs as well. But those are our two biggest impacts that we're still dealing with. But we've gotten most of the water off of the state highways and reopened those roadways. You can go to fl511.com. And that's something that, a lot of people didn't pay a whole lot of attention to prior to the storm. But fl511.com, that became the statewide portal for where we're including, road closure information, where roads are being impacted by the storm. And it really kind of came into its own during this, the response and recovery from Hurricane Ian. And other sites, Google, Waze, they draw from FL511. The data get put in there, they put it on their apps as well. So the navigation systems, it's coming from us, as well as, data that they're collecting themselves. But that's where we put our closures. So you can, use that as a resource in the future and after, other disasters. FL511.com is a place where you can go to get that information. We've been helping out each other here in Central Florida. I've got 6 offices across the district, in our primary counties that were impacted were Osceola, Orange, Seminole, and Volusia, just kind of storm track. But the folks in Brevard and over in Lake and Sumter County and up in Marion County, they have been road warriors all week long, because they have come in and helped out my teams and so I've been talking to my folks out in the field this week, going out and visiting with them, making sure they have what they need. And I like asking them, how many counties have you been in this week? And, and I'm getting up to 4 different counties besides the county that they're coming from, so they're moving all over the place, trying to restore mobility, keep the system in operation. So it's been, it's a tragic, unfortunate, event that's got a lot of impact. A lot of people are out of their homes, and it's just going to be a big impact to the area. But I'm very proud of the DOT's response. So we're doing a great job under extenuating circumstances, and I'm just really proud of their efforts. We are also starting to see some residual impacts. So damage that we didn't first note, in our first or second damage assessment is making itself known. In some cases, it's voids under the pavement that, you didn't see when you first went through it because it wasn't there. The void hadn't migrated up. So we're starting to see some damage. We'll have water levels, goes down here and comes up over there. And, as the water moves through the St. Johns River Basin, it's a very slow moving river. There's a lot of water that's going through it, so, at 46, the river's coming down. At 44, the river's coming up. So we're not out of the woods with our residual impacts. And then another big residual impact is going to be the budgetary impact. Okay. Because we are spending a lot of money to prepare and recover from the storm. Now we get reimbursement, we seek reimbursement, but that takes time. We're still getting reimbursement from past storms. Okay. So the money that we're spending now, it's coming out of current year. It's coming out of our cash reserves. And so how is that going to impact our budget for the remainder of the fiscal year? That's still to be assessed, but that's another one of these residual impacts of the storms passing and our response to it. So more to come on that. And I'm going to come back to that point when I, transition now into kind of our regular business, our regular core mission with DOT. This is the time of year for work program. You've all worked on your list of priority projects, passed those and, submitted them in. And I think, I know we've met, with myself and Jack Atkins and our Plimo team have met with each of your teams, to talk about those priority projects. So as we go into, the work program, we're crystal clear on what your priorities are. We recently got our allocations from the central office. So even though there's a storm, the central office finance team is still doing their normal business. So we've got those allocations. A lot of questions that I get asked from the folks in this room is, hey, when is my project going to be funded? When is this, priority project going to be funded? And I've been saying, well, we haven't had our allocations yet. Well, I can't use that excuse anymore. So we have that, we have those allocations and we're working on it. So now it's really, we're getting into the nitty gritty of trying to figure out what can we do with the work program? How can we advance the next phases of the project? Couple of things that we are still struggling with is cost increases. With inflation, the cost of our projects, pretty much every single project in our program, current year and in outer years, everything in the 5-year plan, everything's gone up, everything. So part of this work program cycle, even with the allocations, is we got to balance that. We got to balance what we've already committed to do, as well as trying to find ways to advance additional phases. So cost increases is still a big deal. It does appear for the moment to have stabilized. We watch our lettings every single month. But we do have, it's not coming down. It's kind of plateauing. So those high costs are still there, but hopefully we're not, still on the rise, but time will tell. And again, the hurricane, residual budgetary impact, how is that going to impact this current, programming process that's still to come. But it is something that we're going to have to try to figure out and deal with. With that in mind, I have, a handful of regional transportation, focus areas that I keep my team focused on, that I keep asking about. And I wanted to share what those are with you. So I-4, beyond the ultimate in Orange and Osceola County, kind of pushing those express lanes, not just down to the Osceola County line, but into Polk County. Okay, because that's, the traffic doesn't know where the county line is, right? And so that corridor is one of our most congested corridors in the state. So it is definitely top of my mind to try to figure out what we can do there. Another area is up on I-75, up in Sumter and Marion County. And that's another, they tell me that's not a capacity problem, Secretary Tyler, it's a reliability problem. I said, well, what's the difference? What's the solution? It's still adding lanes, right? Yes, it is. So let's just focus on adding lanes. Okay. But I-75 from the turnpike, heading north, you've all probably taken it, and you're all, what I'm talking about in terms of the unreliability of that corridor. So we need to find a solution for that. And so that's another one. Moving over to the east side and sticking with the third interstate that we have in Central Florida is I-95. Modernizing I-95 through Volusia County. We're working on interchange projects. Some of the original interchanges that were built when the interstate came through, like up at US 1, it's still there since it was built in the 1960s. Not the safest thing that we could have out there. But beyond the interchanges, then we need to focus on what's next for the corridor. And we're going to be trying to find a way to get a master plan, a long-term vision for I-95 in Central Florida as well, because we've got one for I-4, we're building one for I-75, we need one for I-95 as well. And then the fourth regional focus area that I'll touch on is Sunrail, the Central Florida Rail Corridor. We've got a transition effort underway that we're working with the 5 local partners on. And I want to emphasize it's a transition. It's not DOT going away. It's a transition to new roles. All 6, that's the 5 local partners in DOT, the 6 of us, we're still partners. We're just transitioning to a new role. And DOT is still going to be part of the process moving forward. But we'll be able to focus on what we're best at, which is infrastructure expansion. Okay. And so that leads me to the other thing that we're spending some time on at the request of the CFRC, the Central Florida Rail Commission, and that is a working group on the Sunshine Corridor, which is an expansion opportunity of the Sunrail or the CFRC system, which was always the original intent. Remember, the original intent was for the department to construct the 61-mile corridor, turn it over to the locals for operations, and then expand the system. So, we're doing exactly what we wanted to do, maybe a few years behind schedule, but we're doing exactly what we all envisioned that we would do when we started this process with Sunrail. So that's another item that takes up a lot of my time and attention. But then, those are the big regional ones. I also want to touch on every single one of you, every TPO that's represented here today. You have your own number one priority. That probably wasn't anything that I just mentioned. And I'm aware of that. And I'm aware of that. You know, up in Ocala, I know that I-75 at 49th Street, that interchange is it's a big priority. All right. And we're working on that. Over on State Road 50 in Groveland, that's a priority, as well as US 301 up in Sumter County. And down in Brevard it's Ellis Road. Ellis Road. I talk to my team about Ellis Road very, very frequently. And over in my hometown, well, it's not my hometown, it's my town now, State Road 44 roundabout. I went through there the other day and I couldn't believe how far back the traffic was back to the interstate. And I told my wife, I said, it's got to be an accident or something. She said, no, it's like this every day. You need to get out more. Okay. So it's so we've got priorities that we need to be laser focused on. And I'm going to close out because I know we have friends here from Polk County. Unfortunately, I can't talk a whole lot about Polk County because I'm just not, that knowledgeable about your area. But I do have a corridor that has just recently emerged as something that I really need to have my team focused on, and that's State Road 60. State Road 60. So I'm about done. And then Virginia is going to have to clean up, whatever I missed. But State Road 60, and I'm ending with safety. State Road 60, at least through District 5, because it's 4-lane coming out of Polk County, comes into Osceola, and it comes down to a 2-lane road. We are having a lot of crashes, and they're picking up. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where, when a crash happens, the RTMC notifies me, so I kind of see them in real time, and they're happening more and more, and they're pretty traumatic. And and it seems to be related to unsafe passing, which kind of makes sense. It's 2 lanes. It's long, not much out there. You get behind the truck. You don't want to be behind that truck. You're looking for a way to get around that truck, and then something really tragic happens. We've got some projects. It's a passing lanes project, but it's too far out in the future. I need to find a way to get it moved up in time because it's needed. It's needed right now, as well as what's next is going to be, the widening of that facility. That's the real solution, is widening that roadway, which it is a CIS corridor, so it'll be part of that CIS long range CIS plan. But that's a newly emerging, trouble spot in my mind that does, cross boundaries into Polk. I actually had a meeting with one of the Polk County commissioners about what the department was doing on that corridor. So that's going to be something that's going to be, I got to figure a way to get it into all of these projects that we're working on, because people are losing their lives out there, and that's not acceptable to us. So that we've got a lot of business, we gotta get this storm recovery effort behind us, because there's a lot of business that needs to be done in Central Florida, and my team is 100% engaged. Please reach out to us. Let us know if there's anything else that we can be doing. And I appreciate, being here this morning. I will pause and see if there's any, questions for me before I turn it over to Virginia for, the other items that you're probably interested in. Anything from me? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering about the bridge over the St. John's that's under construction by 42. And
Yes.
how did that fare in the hurricane?
The bridge that we're building, the new bridge,
Right,
is just fine. It's extremely robust.
okay,
And even the old bridge, the Bascule Bridge. Now, one of the things that can happen with a Bascule Bridge, a movable bridge, and because the river has not crested there
okay,
yet, it's still coming up.
it's still coming up.
If it gets into the electricals of the tender house, we could have a problem.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
But we're not there yet. We're monitoring it. We had some water over the road, and I thought maybe the river was coming up, but it was actually caused by something else. And we were able to fix it and get the water back off the road. But the bridge is good. And right now so really the critical points, like on State Road 46, it's not that the bridges are out of water, it's the roadways leading up to them. Those are the low spots. And so that's what we're monitoring. But the bridges are fine. If the river gets too high, it could get into that tender house and those electricals that control that bridge. And then we'd probably have to, well, we'd have to not raise the bridge. So
Yes.
it would be a mobility impact for boats.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And so I will turn it over to Rakinya. Rakinya?
Secretary Tyler, we have one more question, please.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, you mentioned these several projects, very critical projects that's going on now. Do you have those prioritized? And my main question is, where does Ellis Road fit into that?
Well, so each one of the TPOs that are represented here today have their priority project. And Ellis Road is number one on the Space Coast TPO. So I also have 5 kids at home. And I have 5 TPOs that I work with, and some people, and so I love all my kids the same. I love all my children the same, and I want to see all of them achieve their goals. And it's my job to, as a parent, to help them, give them the resources, the encouragement, the guidance, so every single one of them can achieve their goals.
Great answer. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Rakinya?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rakinya Henson, and Secretary Tyler, you actually did a pretty good job, so I didn't need to bring a mop or a broom. You did an excellent job. One additional thing I would like to mention is the roundabout at State Road 44. We do actually have funding, so we're able to move. I see the applause over there. We're able to move the project forward, but we do have funding for the roundabout at State Road 44. In regards to, and I'm just adding some icing on top of the cake that was already presented. But in regards to our work program and cost increases, I just want to add to state that we'd like to ask for your continued flexibility as we navigate this market. Secretary Tyler talked about the increases. We've been mentioning the increases at all of the MPO meetings that we've attended, just to make sure that it's on the radar, that it doesn't come as a surprise, because we've been seeing some of the updates that the average has been about 24 to 25% increases, and we don't know how stable the market's going to continue to be. We hope that's the plateau, and that we've seen the large increases, and we won't continue to see them go any further, but we just want to ask for your flexibility to be able to maneuver these uncharted territory that, we just don't know what's coming next. And in regards to our work program development cycle, our work program has started to meet with the MPOs and the TPOs. As Secretary Tyler said, we did receive our allocations on last week, Friday. So far we've met with Metroplan, and we've met with Space Coast. And basically we've asked them to get us any outline information to tidy up those lists so that we know that we're moving in the right direction, that Ellis Road is still, what it's presented as, Ellis Road, and there hasn't been any changes, that the local partners are able to give us the information that they're required to give us, so that now that we have the allocations, that we're able to move forward with our funding, excuse me, for this current cycle. Also, in regards to work program, we'll have our work program public hearing that takes place on an annual basis. This year, the dates will be December the 5th through the 9th. Where the actual work program meeting will take place at the district office in DeLand on December the 6th. As always, the entire week will be an open forum where any person, any constituent is able to go online and look at the projects that are presented for the next programming cycle, and also ask questions, offer remarks. All of that will be online, but the actual in-person meeting will take place on December the 6th. In regards to the additional announcements that I have, one is Mobility Week. This year's Mobility Week will be from October the 21st through the 28th, as we'll be celebrating with some of our local partners. During Mobility Week, different counties and transportation agencies actually host events and offer special promotions. And this year we're doing the same, where we're encouraging Floridians to try new transportation options. Some of the local counties have already started giving us information as to what they're planning to do. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, you can feel free to contact our office. We do have staff that's available to you pretty much as a resource to help you brainstorm some ideas if you don't have something in mind and you want to do something, and also put you in touch with other partners that are also doing things and people in your local area that you may be able to partner with as well. And lastly is from our safety office, where we are joining with the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Traffic Safety Administration, and Federal Highway Administration to celebrate October as National Pedestrian Safety Month. We're trying to improve safety for some of those vulnerable road users. On October the 5th, which was earlier this week, we celebrated International Walk to School Day. Excuse me, and offering some pedestrian safety tips with children and working with schools. And then on October the 15th, we have White Cane Safety Day, which is always a reminder to stop before the crosswalk. It's a national endeavor where the Florida Department of Transportation will be working with the U.S. Department of Transportation just to kind of raise people's conscious awareness of, you know, the legality of stopping within a crosswalk, and also the pedestrian safety that comes into play when people are in the crosswalk. And so again, October the 15th, White Cane Safety Day. So there'll be more information. But again, if you're interested in any of these observations, you can utilize our office as a resource. And that's all the information I have to share with you this morning, but I'm available for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And do we have any additional questions? For Ms. Henson? No, I guess you're off the hook. Thank you so much for being here today. And I think we're going to all try Secretary Tyler not to ask about any more projects, seeing you have hurricane. That'll be our gift to you today. Thank you. We can tell your passion for safety, and you've mentioned that several times when you look with the accidents, and that's right. What we all do here is about saving human lives. So we appreciate your work in that endeavor. I also use your illustration about children. I have grandchildren though. And so I talk about them all the time. So I'm glad they're an illustration and help to you when you're dealing with the rest of us. All right. And our final report is from Florida's Turnpike Enterprise with Mr. Sayosi. You are up.
Good morning, Alliance members. My name is Sayosi Fine, and I'm with the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. So one quick update. FTE will be beginning the fully electronic toll collection conversion for the entire Polk Parkway. The project looks to improve safety and enhance mobility across the corridor. So with this project, cash will no longer be accepted at tolling points on the Polk Parkway between Airport Road and Eastern Mainline Plaza in Polk County. And this began on September 23rd of 2022. But speaking about that, the Sunpass Transponders are available for purchase at several retail locations, which include CVS, Amscot, Walgreens, Publix, AAA, Soldano's, and Navarro. Also, you can go to the vending machines at the I-4 rest area in Polk County, and transponders will also be available there. But with that being said, that is under my report.
All right, Mr. COC, thank you. Any questions for him? All right, thank you. So now we can move on to the rest of our agenda with the action items. And the first action item that I have is approval of the previous minutes for February 4th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes from February 4th, 22, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries and it is unanimous. All right, the next action item that we have is the 2023 proposed meeting schedule that staff has submitted to you the meeting schedule, and I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve that meeting schedule.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and with that, to have a vote to approve the meeting schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and the motion is approved and it's unanimous. All right, and at the next 6C is a presentation by Ms. Virginia Whittington from Metro Plan Orlando to talk about any revisions from the CFM-POA interlocal agreement. With that, Ms. Whittington.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good morning again. Just going back to your schedule of meetings for 2023, you will note that one meeting has been removed. Every other year, we meet with the Suncoast Transportation Alliance. Next year will be the off year, so you only have 3 meetings on the calendar for 2023. So I just wanted to call attention to that. And with the interlocal agreement, from time to time, we do a scrub just to make sure that everything is fresh and that there are no changes that are required. During the review this year, we did find a couple of changes that we wanted to submit to you on this morning. The first change that you have this in your agendas at tab 4, if you'd like to follow along. But most of these were kind of Scribner's and kind of catching up with technology and that sort of thing. We have not for several years published a set of MPO Alliance legislative priorities. What we do is we kind of just support one another. So we just wanted to state that for item 1G on page 2, we just inserted the words "where possible" to coordinate those legislative priorities, which means that we will coordinate with one another and where we're able to support and keep one another abreast of what's happening in the legislature during session, we will do that. Moving on to page 3, paragraph number 3 there. This is the change from the TBARTA, from the West Central Florida Chairs Coordinating Committee to now the new organization name is Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance. And also in number 4, noting that ordinarily this meeting would be the meeting where we would approve or adopt the elected officers for the Central Florida MPO Alliance. When we met during our agenda prep, the directors felt that we needed to possibly move this to February in order to allow any transitions on your boards that may take place. So the chairs who are currently in place, the chair and vice chair and secretary, those officers will roll over through the first of the year, and at your first meeting of 2023, officers would be elected. Now, this has historically been a rotation in the MPOs and TPOs who are a part of this body. And so that just gives an opportunity for, if any commissioners or board members roll off, new board members come on, that we have the opportunity to get everyone oriented and on the same page. And then that person or persons would take effect at that first meeting. So the gavel will pass at that very first meeting. Also, we wanted to, the priority list that you have in your agendas today, you're going to be getting that the report from Georgiana Gillette in just a moment. But we wanted to offer an opportunity for us to, again, keep up with technology. When we first formed as an MPO, the products that we are responsible for producing are the priority lists and a comprehensive long-range transportation plan. So what we're recommending is that those be available in electronic format, not necessarily a printed version, but can be printed. So that kind of lowers our costs even more. And the other update had to do with an update to page 6. On page 6, the updated information, we've kind of removed the names of the directors. They were in there before, so we just say the executive director. those addresses that needed to be updated have been updated, and also got an update this morning from Osceola, I'm sorry, from Ocala Marion TPO, where we will insert their correct address. And Madam Chair and members, those are the proposed changes. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we are looking for your approval this morning.
Any questions for Ms. Whittington? Okay, with that, Ms. Whittington, thank you so much for that report. And then I understand that I should be introducing Georgiana Gillette with some of the list of priorities from the Space Coast TPO.
And Madam Chair, as Georgiana is coming forward, if we can have an action on that, the last item, we do need a motion.
Do I
adopt
need a
those.
motion?
Yes.
For the approval of the interlocal. All right,
Yes.
excuse me on that. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion for the approval of the changes and the revisions to the CFMPOA interlocal agreement.
So move.
All right, and with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion
Thank you.
passes unanimously. All right, time for Georgiana now.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to be with you today to talk about the update of the regional priority list. If you remember at the February meeting, we discussed the process and the schedule for developing priorities through the Alliance. You also received last year's approved regional priority list at that time. So just a reminder, MPOs around the state develop a list of transportation project priorities for their respective areas on an annual basis. And once these projects are adopted, they're forwarded to DOT for their programming, state and federal funding to our respective areas. But here in Central Florida, MPOs work through the Central Florida MPO Alliance to collectively develop a regional transportation priorities that also assist FDOT District 5 in programming projects that are considered regional in nature. And through this unified approach, we can leverage increased resources for the region and connect our populations and our markets by working as an alliance with the Florida DOT. So the categories for the priority list, just to kind of quickly go over those, are the Transportation Regional Incentive Program. And as you know, TRIP was created to improve regionally significant facilities, and state funds are available at 50% to provide incentives for local governments and the private sector to help pay for projects that improve regional travel and commerce. Then we have the Strategic Intermodal System. So of course, we're talking about high priority projects of regional and statewide significance. Then we have our regional trails, generally the Sun Trail system, but there are other trails included that are considered regional in nature. And then regional transit projects, typically typically rail and bus rapid transit projects. And then of course, the new category that we've been talking about is the regional TISMO, and Eric will be talking about that in the next presentation. So all of the MPOs have approved our independent priority lists and incorporated the changes into the regional list. And what you have in your agenda package is the tables that have been marked up and approved based on action taken at each respective MPO. New additions and updates to cost estimates are in red, and deletions are in red strike through. There is also a clean version in your package with the strike through and the color removed. And so I'm just going to quickly review some of the substantive changes since last year in each category. So let's start with TRIP. Metro Plan Orlando. I also want to say, as the Secretary mentioned, and Rakenya, cost increases across the board. And so all of those cost increases were reflected in the priority list. But beginning with the TRIP list, I also want to mention the TRIP list projects are not ranked. Several of the MPOs did not feel comfortable ranking the TRIP list. And of course, those projects are available again by a 50% local match, so they are not ranked. Metro Plan Orlando did submit 7 new projects that were added to the list, and all of them need construction funding. Old Lake Wilson Road Econ-Lockhatchee widening, and I'm sorry, I think I butchered that name. 2 segments of the Canoe Creek Road, also Kelly Park Road widening, and the Winter Park Drive bicycle pedestrian bundle, and that's at 3 locations. So these are all new trip projects added to MetroPlan Orlando's list. Then River to Sea also included a few new projects. Belterre Parkway intersection improvements at 3 locations, new 2-lane road at Dunn Avenue, and the widening of West Volusia Beltway, Williamson Boulevard, and Taylor Road are all new projects. For the Space Coast TPO, we did receive some new funding for Ellis Road, but unfortunately, additional construction funds are needed, and the Brevard Traffic Management Center as well. We do need some additional construction funding for those 2 trip projects. For Ocala Marion, they added a new project on Southwest 45th Avenue, and the proposed phase is construction. For the CIS fully funded list, there was a new project that was added, and that is State Road 60. And I think perhaps this could be the project that Secretary Tyler mentioned, eastbound and westbound passing lanes. So construction is funded on this project. And then moving on to the CIS needs list. And I will also remind everyone, the CIS projects are ranked and prioritized, and that was done many years ago. And as new projects come on the list, they are generally put at the bottom of the list. So that is the process that we have been using. So for the Space Coast, beginning with project number 1, the Ellis Road widening that I just mentioned, there is additional funding that is needed, but there is some construction funds, which is great news. Project 15 is the State Road 401 bridge replacement at Port Canaveral. Design is funded. That is new funding, but the next year, the next phase that would be needed is construction. For MetroPlan Orlando, the I-4 Ultimate Configuration projects, they are in need of additional right-of-way funds over the next few years. Actually, that's project number 2 and project 3A, as well as construction funding. Project 21 is the I-4 truck parking from Osceola Polk County line to Seminole Volusia County line. New funding has been identified for right-of-way and construction, but to add 2 new sites in the future, that will require additional right-of-way and construction. River to Sea, project 3B. This is the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate, general use and managed lanes. There were incremental interchange and ramp improvements that were added with this project that are being requested at State Road 472, Saxon Boulevard, and Rhode Island Extension. Project 4A is US 17 from De Leon Springs Boulevard to Lake Winona Road. Construction is funded in fiscal year 23. Project 16 is I-95 at LPGA Boulevard from 92 to Williamson Road. Right-of-way is funded in fiscal year 26, and the next phase is construction. Project 17, I-95 interchange at Pioneer Trail. This is a design build that is funded in fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 25. Project 18 is the I-95 interchange at US 1. Right-of-way is funded, and the next phase is construction. So CIS, moving on to Lake Sumter. Project 8 is State Road 50 from County Road 565 to the road to Villa City. Additional right-of-way funds are needed. And project 13A and 13B, these are 2 segments for widening on West State Road 50. There is a need for additional right-of-way funds. For Ocala Marion, they added several new projects that were included to the CIS list. And there's 2 new I-75 segments for widening, and they are currently in the PD&E master plan that is underway. And also I-75 interchange at US 27 and I-75 at State Road 326. Those are both safety and operational improvements at both of those locations. So moving on to Sun Trails, Tier 1, which is generally the coast-to-coast trail. T1A and T1B for the Space Coast. Funds for these two segments were deleted last year, and they have been put back in the work program by the department, and the construction is funded in fiscal year 27. And for Metroplan Orlando, T1-2 is the Clarcona-Ocoee Trail. Pine Hills Trail will be completed as part of the roadway project, the State Road 50 realignment. And T1-3, Pine Hills Trail Phase 3, which is the Orange County Gap Segment 2. Construction is funded in fiscal year 26. For Lake Sumter, State Road 50, this is T1-4B, State Road 50 South Sumter Connector from US 301 to east of County Road 478A. This is a shared use path, which is included in the roadway project, and construction is underway. And then they also added some new trail segments, T1-4C and 4D, which are the State Road 50 South Sumter Connector projects, and their trails that are currently in design, and both of these are included in the roadway project. Moving on to Tier 2 for the River to Sea, TPO, Oak Hill at Edgewater Gap. From the Kennedy Parkway to Dale Avenue, construction has been deferred to fiscal year 26. Palmetto Avenue Gap, from Ridge Boulevard to Bevel Road, construction is funded in fiscal year 23. Spruce Creek Road Gap, from south of Sellen Circle to Herbert Street, construction is funded in fiscal year 23. And then for the Lake Sumter MPO, T3-1 is the Wekiva Trail, segments 1 and 5. This is Diston Avenue to County Road 437. Design is underway, and the next phase is right of way. Metroplan, T3-7, Pine Hills Trail Phase 2 from Bonnie Bray to Clarcona-Ocoee Road. Design is underway. Construction is in fiscal year 25. So then we end with our regional transit projects. There were some wordsmithing, some just edits to some of the language, but some of the additions, the Sunrail connection to OIA, US 441 premium transit service, an intermodal passenger rail station feasibility study for COCO. That is a project that the TPO is currently pursuing. Votran mobility on demand bus service to Sunrail, Phase 2 North in DeLand. And then, of course, our privately funded, the Brightline trains, Orlando to Tampa, that study is underway. And a future transit project, which is new, Sunrail parking feasibility, Phase 2 South. And so next steps, as the Secretary mentioned, they have received their funding allocations. My understanding is they're going through the reconciliations and trying to figure out what they have left to be able to fund all of these projects for us. So with your approval, we will finalize this list, make it a final list, cleaned up, and submit send that list to all of you, to the members, a PDF version as well as the Excel version, and then transmit that to the Florida DOT for programming. And with that, Madam Chair, we are asking for approval.
Yes, thank you, Georgiana. Any questions for her? Okay, with that, then I would entertain a motion to approve the regional priority project list.
Madam Chair, I move to accept this splendid report from Ms. Georgiana Gillette.
It's the splendid report. A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion is approved.
Technically,
unanimously.
an approval, not just an acceptance.
Oh, did I say that?
No, no, she
Approval.
said acceptance, so, but
Oh.
you meant approval, correct?
Yes, approved.
Approved, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, that was exciting because I had some projects in my district too. I hope you all found some that got you excited to be here today. All right, so we are into the next portion of our program with presentations. And first up, I have Mr. Eric Hill with Metro Plan Orlando, who will present to us the draft methodology for ranking these CFMPOA TISMO projects.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, members. For those that are new or relatively new, have not heard me speak about TISMO in the past, I just want to share with you that TISMO is the use of information, communication, and technology to improve mobility, reliability, and safety on our transportation network. And so a few years ago, we have a regional TISMO consortium made up of staff members from each of your jurisdictions. Most of them are traffic engineers. And there was a discussion on how we could move TISMO projects onto your prioritized project list. And in the discussion, they said, well, Eric, why don't you go and propose this? I said, okay, but just don't make this a habit. So I presented this to this group a couple of years ago. And you tasked me with coming back with a definition of a TISMO network. And so we've done that. And then you said, well, now you need to rank those. So I went back to the consortium. I said, they want a ranking. And they said, well, Eric, go back and give them a ranking. So this morning, I'm going to give you the ranking. But I want to also just note that TISMO addressed 60% of the congestion that we all encounter. Most of the congestion doesn't have anything to do with supply, has more to do with demand. And so some of those challenges are poor signal timing, weather, incidents, events. These are things that TISMO strategies can address. These are typically low-cost strategies with high returns, but I want to caution you that it's not a silver bullet. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities. So with that intro, the network, the definition of regional TISMO projects, or projects that impact two cities that, or projects that touch two cities or counties. They're projects that enhance the existing investments that we've already made, and that it allows for access outside the region. Now, there are some caveats. We don't always want to address problems because there are opportunities that we see. Some of the MPOs and TPOs do not have TISMO projects that meet this definition. And TISMO is a dynamic discipline. It's changing constantly. I used to always tell the story about Uber being German, when it's a German definition of grandiose, but then it became a $60 billion company. That's how technology changes. And then the last bullet there, we don't want to just look at technology for the sake of technology. And there's low technology and there's high technology. There's a simple application of a memorandum of understanding of sharing knowledge between jurisdictions, using data. That's low technology, doesn't cost a whole lot, but has a huge impact. And then, yes, we do have some high technology strategies that we want to practice. And then lastly, there's the value proposition. You know, I remember when Congresswoman Corrine Brown was championing Sunrail funding. And she said that the strength of the wolf is in the pack. And we see that a lot in these regional TISMO projects that the feds want to fund. They want to see a regional commitment to the project. And that's what they like to see. It also gives us vision and direction, commitment, and it links planning with operations. So let me talk about the ranking that you've tasked me with developing. And I want to thank the department because they were gracious to fund this project or this effort with a contract to Gannett Fleming. And the rubric, that's what Gannett Fleming has called this, and that's semantic, you can change that. But it looks at these categories: transportation efficiency, multimodal systems, economic development, cost efficiencies, equity and livability, safety, environment, and resiliency. And I'll just go into a little bit. I won't go too far because at some point, this has been shared with each of the directors. This strategy or this proposal has been shared with each of the directors to review and provide comments back to me so I can give it back to Gannett Fleming so that we can bring this to fruition or bring it in for a landing. Let me start with efficiency in multimodal systems. Here we're just talking about how can we be more efficient in how things are operated and how we can move people from using just cars to other modes of transportation. But the questions that we're going to be doing when we rank each of the projects that are submitted is looking at each of these areas, reducing congestion, reducing incidents, freight movement, active transportation, and performance of our system. So these are the things that we're going to be asking questions about the projects that are submitted. Under economic development, connections with employment areas, and project bundling. Now, this is something that Metro Plan Orlando has started doing with our TISMO projects. Orange County, for example, has TISMO projects spread throughout the county. Instead of just funding each of those projects, how can we bundle those together so we can get them funded and implemented? Livability and equity, providing access to entertainment areas, and addressing disadvantaged communities. And Madam Chair, I just want to pause here, if I may, to talk about this, because this is one that I find a lot of interest in. I go back to former USDOT Secretary Anthony Fox, who used to be the mayor of the city of Charlotte. He grew up in Charlotte. And he used to always say to us at our international technology meetings, he used to say, I grew up in Charlotte, and when the interstate system was built, it separated my community from downtown Charlotte. And he advised us not to allow technology to have that same impact, because it can't. And so we want to be able to connect technology to disadvantaged communities and address some of those barriers that have been created by the investments we've made. Safety, this is on everybody's mind, I'm sure. But with this one, there's a phrase in the TISMO world called situation awareness. When there's an incident, how do we look at that incident and address it correctly? Make sure that the right resources are being used to address it. So we want to look before the incidents occur, and then how do we address it after the incident has occurred? How do we get road rangers out there? How do we get the towing operators out there to clean up the scene, to get traffic moving or get us back on par? And then we have environmental resiliency, but here we want to promote other modes of transportation using technology, information communications. But then each MPO has a congestion management plan, and we want to ensure, or at least ask that question, is this project in your congestion management plan? So, excuse me, I have one more here. Examples of projects that we already have, State Road 40, the signalized intersection collision warning system, touches Volusia and Marion counties, parking information system, touches 3 counties. And then the big one, which is the integrated corridor management system throughout the I-4 corridor, allows for us to move traffic off of the interstate when there's an incident or when demand requires that. So, Madam Chair, again, this is for presentation at this point. The whole document has been shared with the directors for their review and comments. And at the next meeting, we're going to come back and have this approved so that we can bring TISMO projects onto your list. As Ms. Gillette had mentioned, we're the kind of new kid on the block, if you will, with the Alliance. And so we want to include that in the list of projects that you want to support.
So you developed this so that you didn't have to make all the decisions?
Part of that, no, well, I want to share with all, I want to share with everyone.
No, that's a very uncomfortable place to be. Any questions for Mr. Hill? I appreciate your work on this. And how soon do you think we'll have something to approve?
Well, again, it's been shared with the directors. As soon as we get the comments back, we'll give it back to Gannett Fleming, and then we'll come back at your next meeting for approval.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hill.
And Madam Chair, if I may, Eric does have a double header here, but I also wanted to mention that when this does come back to the Alliance in February, Once we receive that approval, I think we move into, it's just in time to be able to start having the TISMO projects included in that priority list that Georgiana just gave you. So next time you see that list, it will have incorporated those TISMO projects.
Okay, that's great. That's right, Mr. Hill, we have you for another presentation. I'm glad that we were chatting so you could get a little drink of water. So you're going to update us on the Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations Program.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
So again, maybe 2-3 years ago, I was asked to participate in a TISMO training program in District 1. And after giving the presentation, a few of the MPOs in District 1 asked if I would be willing to share some of my information with them. And from that point, it just grew into a larger discussion with how do we bring in the other MPOs within Central Florida to advance TISMO. And this is planning. It has nothing to do with implementation or deployment of projects, just planning of projects. So we started, again, looking at the I-4 corridor, but it had just grew from out of that to as far north as on the west coast to Pasco County, and now includes the MPOs that you see here. Now, Lake Sumter has agreed to move forward with joining this group with the MOU. We have memorandum of understanding between each of these MPOs, as well as with Ocala Marion. They're both have expressed interest in moving forward with joining this group. So some of the accomplishments that we do have a memorandum of understanding between all these MPOs. We have a working group that's made up of the staff from each of these MPOs. The State Transportation Innovative Council Award. Again, going back to that notion of the strength of the wolf is in the pack. Since we started this group, we submitted a couple of applications for funding, and we did receive a $100,000 award from this group to support this work. We also teamed with the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida to receive a National Institute on Congestion Reduction grant, another $100,000. And then again, Qatar liked what we're doing, and so they asked us to join with a application to the Department of Energy. And we did receive, I believe, it's an $8 million grant. We are not getting all that $8 million. We have a small piece of that, but want to be part of the team. And then lastly, a peer exchange. One of the things we started out talking about, there are other organizations around the country that have joined on a regional scale to advance TISMO. And so we wanted to look at what they're doing. We wanted to bring them in and have a discussion with them, and we were able to do that. So those 3 items that they're not bullets, but have the arrows, I'll touch on in this presentation. So the working group, we did start with some goals and objectives. We do have regular meetings. I wanted to get an understanding of what the other MPOs would like to get out of this effort. And there is a survey that Federal Highway Administration uses for TISMO. And I tried using that to get an understanding, but it has more of an ownership operation bent to it. So you have to manage and operate a system in order for it to work properly. So just did away with that and developed a questionnaire for all the MPOs to look at. And what the themes that we got were, we want to share knowledge, we want to figure out how we can fund TISMO projects to get them advanced. And then the whole prioritizing the TISMO project. So that second bullet is one of those things that Metro Plan Orlando has been doing for many years now. And then prioritizing projects is one that we've also been doing, and what we were asking this group to do with the previous presentation. So that's on the working group. With the grant we receive from the National Institute on Congestion Reduction, we have completed 2 documents. The first one was just a literature review on what's going on in the TISMO world. The second one was looking at what some of those organizations from around the country are doing in terms of advancing TISMO on a regional scale. And this document was used in putting together the peer exchange that we had. So here are a list of the organizations that we identified around the country that are doing TISMO on a regional scale. It varies. You have some that are very organized and structured, like the Eastern Transportation Coalition. This is all the states from Maine to Florida that are part of a coalition. They have governance, they receive funding. In fact, all the funding that is being used for, looking at how we go from a fuel tax source for funding our transportation system to mileage base. They're receiving all those funds to do studies on that. I-10 Coalition, one that's kind of not so organized. So there was some lessons we learned from there. And then the third bullet, and then I'll move on. But the third bullet there, the Niagara International Transportation Technology Coalition, that one's bi-country. It's based in Buffalo, so it works between Canada and the United States. So that one provided a very interesting perspective that we liked. So these are the groups that we identified that we also had as part of our peer exchange. But we used, again, the framework from the study that Cutter has done for us to identify pieces that will help in moving forward with a regional TSMO program. The first one was having a strategic plan, a work plan, doing annual reviews, funding, which is always a challenge, staff, and then governance structure. One of the things that I like to say about Metro Plan Orlando's TSMO's program, the secret sauce in our recipe is that we've always had a champion, starting with Commissioner Ted Edwards from Orange County to Commissioner Delary now. And then at the federal level, Congressman Micah, he was a big champion of TSMO. And then education and communication. And then that last one is equity that I spoke a little bit about earlier. So with that information, we had a peer exchange on September 13th. We had good attendance. It was virtual. We had good attendance. We had representation from each of the districts, from Federal Highway Administration, from each of those organizations that we identified. And it was a good discussion. And I did brief each of the directors on where we were going with this and kind of like offered a buzzkill on, this is what we want at the end of the day. And what we wanted was consensus on how do we move this forward, if we move it forward, or do we just let it stay where it is? And so, after having some presentation from those organizations that we identified and having Cutter present this potential framework, we sought some guidance. And there was consensus amongst the directors that first step or the next step we take is to develop a strategic plan. So that's where we are. And we're moving forward with organizing to put together a strategic plan. So that's all that I have on the regional TSMO program, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hill. Any questions for him? Well, it's been exciting to watch your progress over the last couple of years.
Well, thank you.
Okay, and we mentioned earlier that we had the report given earlier, and so now we're at number 8 with public comments. Do we have anyone who wishes to address the group at this time?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. And we also have the opportunity for any members if you'd like to comment at this time. All right, then with that, number 10, our agenda is the upcoming meetings and events of interest. We have the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit hosted by Pope TPO and Suncoast TPA on November 3rd. And then our next meeting of this organization will be February 10th, 2023, Metro Plan Orlando's building right here, 250 South Orange Avenue, Suite 200.
Madam Chair, can I add one other item to that?
Sure.
Virginia mentioned that Mobility Week is coming up towards the end of October, 21st through the 28th. On October 27th, the Florida Department of Transportation, Florida, or the National Federation for the Blind, Central Florida chapter, and the Greater Orlando Council for the Blind will be hosting what's called the Blind Experience. And that's going to be at Link Central Station at 2:00 p.m. And this experience is an awakening. We have volunteers from Lighthouse Central Florida who are sight impaired and blind. They blindfold sighted people and help the sighted people to cross the street so that they have the same experience of the built environment when they can't see. Last year, we had some really interesting responses from the engineers who actually build these or design these roadways, and they were afraid because you could hear the traffic as it's whizzing by, sidewalks that were uneven. And so it's really, really an interesting experience. So anyone who may be in the area of Lynn Central Station at 2:00 p.m. on October 27th is welcome and invited to attend.
What time?
2 p.m. It will immediately follow the Links board meeting. And Secretary Tyler will be one of people who will be participating. So thank you very much for that commitment.
Okay, and with that, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay.